Adam, thank you so much for joining CHGO Bears. Great to see you, my friend.
No, thanks for having me on. Appreciate being here. And I love coming in, listening to Braggs talking about this Hard Knock situation because it is disappointing. Like, I love the McCaskey family, and I get it because, like, if you think about George Halas, like, would he have wanted to be on Hard Knocks? Is this something that he would have wanted to do? Is this something that the family would have wanted to do? I really do. I feel like the family would say no. But unfortunately, you're going to get railroaded into this thing unless Rodgers gets traded in the next couple of weeks and they, set that aside. That's the only way that keeps the Bears off Hard Knocks, because these other owners will just be like, tough luck, like, you're doing it, and it will be the best possible situation. Trust me, George, you're going to love it.
I mean, right, Adam, go give me an idea of what exactly George McCaskey, if you can somehow move into the McCaskey head, is afraid of other than ghosts. You have Matt Eberflus. The dude drinks whole milk and goes to bed at 9 o'clock after he's done studying tape. Justin Fields is the most perfect guy going. Everybody, who are you? You're not going to be drafting Jalen Carter. We can have that conversation coming up. Like, you have... You are grilled cheese, Cheerios, tomato soup football team right now who hopefully will win a bunch of games this year.
Yeah, we all have a relative who you love, who you just think is the best, and you're like, okay, we're all going to Olive Garden, and they're like, nah, I can't do it. Like, why not? Like, what's the downside of unlimited breadsticks? What are you doing? And they're like, nah, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna drink my old style, and I just don't want to deal with it. And I get, like, when you have football people who've been doing this for generations, they hate anything new. It's like trying to get, like, one of your older relatives, like, let me show you TikTok. Like, get out of here. I'm never. They still have a VCR, like, stuff like that. Where you're just like, I understand what you're like. Not everything new is something for you to be afraid of. And I feel like from a old school football traditionalist family, which the Bears certainly are, they're not up for this. And this doesn't surprise me in the least. And I think that over the last 5 years, ever since Ryan Pace was hired, there's been a slow evolution of the Chicago Bears of joining the rest of the league in modern football. I mean, now we have an assistant GM. Now we're looking to build our own stadium. Things that other teams have been doing for years, we're now starting to do just right now. And so for us to be behind, like, the Ford family's in the same boat. Like, do you think that the Ford family wanted to be on Hard Knocks? Probably not. But somebody convinced them that this was a good idea. Where are the grandkids? Where are the great-grandkids? Have them explain it to you. Like, once McCaskey's, like, all you got to do is get McCaskey's grandkids into the mix. They'll convince him, be like, okay, it's a good idea. Like George is a fun guy. Like, he actually is a fun guy too. Like, you would love this. So we need to change the approach. Get the grandkids. Well, I know that they play high school football somewhere in the area. Get out there and be like, you guys got to be on Hard Knocks. They're probably dying to do it. And it's like, you just got to get your grandfather and your great grandmother to get on board.
Well, you talk about the evolution of this franchise here in recent years, and it certainly feels that way. And I think one of the biggest shoes to drop was a new president to this team. Yeah. And not only a new president, but someone that isn't an in-house guy. They brought somebody outside the organization, which isn't like McCaskey to do in a lot of ways, in my opinion. He comes in April 17th, officially leaving the Big Ten. He's had such an impact in just the short amount of years he's with the Big Ten. He got UCLA and USC to come over.
Wait, hold on. He got USC. Don't throw UCLA into that. Don't act like USC was like Fox didn't want to leave the LA media market open. I'm sorry, I live in Southern California.
And it'll be really interesting to see them integrate to the Big Ten. Maybe they can get Big Ten basketball back on track. We'll see. But when it and the new TV deal, so he's obviously very centered on understanding about the appeal to the media, social media, TV, and otherwise. Do you think Kevin Warren, the new president, will have an impact on swaying his perspective on this? Because that's my hope.
100%. Yeah. Like, it's funny. Like, I watched that same clip with McCaskey, and I just took it as like, okay, of course you're going to feel that way. But all these guys are so forward thinking, and they understand the business of the NFL. And again, I will point, one of the reasons why Kevin Warren is going to be here is to help usher us into Arlington Heights. And he was a big proponent or a big impetus of how Minnesota got their stadium deal done in downtown Minneapolis. He is going to be doing the same type of thing. This is going to be a very hip, modern franchise. And it's in Chicago, which is one of the best cities in the world. It's one thing to be able to make Minnesota, Minneapolis is actually pretty cool. But you know what I'm saying? This is going to be, I think, over the next couple of decades, is going to end up being the focal point of the NFL. Chicago is going to know, and there'll be years where we may be down or whatever, but Chicago is going to be this well-run machine, having a new stadium, having a state-of-the-art, facilities, having a state-of-the-art destination of where people are going to come and hang out in Arlington Heights, and it's going to be cool. And for everybody, and let me tell you something right now. I live in Southern California. Understand, SoFi Stadium is not in Los Angeles. It's in the suburbs. It still works. It's still really cool. And that's exactly what we're going to have. So I think that all this stuff lends into it. The stadium, Hard Knocks, being relevant beyond the NFL. All this stuff is going to be happening with the Chicago Bears.
Adam, what will help the Bears be relevant is getting some of these draft picks right. And let's say the Bears stay at number 9 here. There's no trade down scenario. Polls can't find anybody to trade down. Do you have a preference of whether the Bears go offense or defense with that 9th overall pick? All the guys that you have on your draft board there, Adam, are on there available at 9. Do you have a preference?
None of this matters what I think. I think, it's going to come down to Ryan Poles, and I kind of trust. I know you mentioned Jalen Carter. Again, if the Bears drafted him, and I'm not saying that they are, but I trust Ryan Poles to do his due diligence. And if he's making, I'm like, okay, I'll go along with it. Everything being said with the offensive, all the deficiencies on the offensive line and the defensive line, I personally would go with Jackson Smith and Jigba, because I really do believe that we need to double down at the wide receiver position. I know that it looks great that we've got Mooney, Claypool, and DJ Moore, but you need that 4th guy. And if anything happens, if Claypool doesn't develop, if Mooney doesn't develop, and you need to move on, not only do you need a solid number 2 with DJ Moore, we're going to need a wide receiver who's on a rookie deal so that when we extend guys like Justin Fields, we have that option.
Right. I'm not against it, because we talked about it the other night on our After Dark show. The Bears have 2 first-round picks next year. Yeah. So, but this is your one chance to take a position group where it's first off the board, first wide receiver off the board. Those 2 picks next year may not be an opportunity to take a first offensive lineman or a first wide receiver off the board. So if they may, I'm with you. I'm all in on Ryan Poles. I think he's kind of got this mob boss mentality, swagger to him, and he's made so many right moves. He's put us in this position where the Bears are now picking first. I don't think any of us thought that was possible, and now here we are. They trade that to get DJ Moore. I couldn't be more all in on – it was easy last year to hedge and say, I'm not worried about the win-loss. I'm just worried about development. This year, now I'm starting to veer back towards my meatball mode, and I'm going to be hard-pressed to not be overexcited about my expectations on the win-loss perspective this year.
Bro Delicious with the super chat. Hal $9.99. Thank you, Bro Delicious. Hallis was a great salesman when the NFL started and was always coming up with some scheme to promote the league and the Bears. For his grandson to turn down Hard Knocks is against Papa Bear's legacy. That's a good spin right there, Bro Delicious. Yeah. I like that spin.
He kept the Green Bay Packers organization running. He sent them a check to keep them in business. The Bears have done so much. The McCaskies have done so much to keep this league what it is today. They should tell that story on Hard Knocks.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? I forgot. I'm still thinking of McCaskey as this Navy man who would be he doesn't want to do. But you're absolutely right, Bro Delicious. The whole notion of he did everything to promote the NFL. That's another thing too, is that because the Packers have won Super Bowls and the Lombardi Trophy and all that stuff, I really wish that the Bears' history was a little bit more well known of what they've done to help get the NFL to this point. Baseball does a great job. Everybody knows who Babe Ruth is and all these great Yankees of lore and all these old-timey baseball players. And yet, if I sit here and tell somebody about, it's almost to the point where kids don't remember Jay Cutler, whatever. But I wish we could talk about it, because I made the joke about when we were looking for another wide receiver before we got DJ Moore, is we got to talk to the McAfee family to get their number 5 down so we can give it to T. Higgins. And somebody's like, Pat Mac? I'm like, I'm not having this conversation anymore. But nobody knows.
It's true. I got to follow up on that, but let me just tell you quickly, team, about DraftKings, our fine sponsor. I got a ton of plays tonight, by the way, on the Bulls and the Lakers. Pat Bev, you are going to double down on your LeBron is too little situation. You're getting over 4.5 rebounds tonight, Pat Bev. I've got you, Pat Bev. You and the Bulls are going to hold LeBron over under the 24.5. I'm very fired up for Bulls and Lakers tonight, even though Rank is shaking his head sitting out there in LA and might be even a Lakers fan, which would make me nauseous. DraftKings, though, is where you gotta go to get her done, make yourself some money, have some fun, make the game more fun. Download the app now, sign up with the code CHGO. New customers can bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets instantly, only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, with the code CHGO. Minimum age and restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
No, Adam's getting Angels tickets. He's a huge Angels fan. And he needs to get out there and see Ohtani a few more times before we bring him to Chicago to play for the Cubs next year.
Oh, I've got some bad news for you. He's not going to Chicago. If he does leave, and I honestly don't think he will, especially if the team wins this year. If he does leave, it's either going to be San Diego or Seattle. He doesn't want to play in the huge markets. It was one of the reasons why he signed with the Angels in the first place. It's funny, like if you listen to New York sports talk, for the last week in New York City, the Mets made a lot of moves in the offseason, the Yankees or whatever. They only talk about Ohtani, and it's hilarious. And I'm like, when he doesn't, like you guys did this with Mike Trout, like you had been ready for Mike Trout to be a Yankee, and it never happened. And I'm happy about it. I think Ohtani's going to be the same way. He loves Newport Beach.
Well, and they're talking about Aaron Rodgers in New York, right? I mean, what are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers leaving the division, or hasn't yet, but potentially leaving the division and to go to New York to play in that media market?
I can't wait. You know what? He's been a little insulated, protected in Green Bay. Like nobody really challenges him on anything. And so if he has to go and play in New York, I could see a number of meltdowns happening. I could see a lot of things going poorly for him, which is exactly what I want to have happen. Not not in a personal situation, but as a football player, like I would love to see him experience more failure like he did last season. Like watching that Lions game, and I will say this, and I hate to give the Lions credit for anything. Outside of the Kansas City Chiefs, no team had a better ending of their season than the Detroit Lions. Like it was perfect for them. Like you won your last game. Your last game was against your arch rival who had made your life miserable for generations, and you humiliated them on Sunday Night Football. That is like I was so jealous, and I never thought I'd say this. I was so jealous of the Lions. Like, oh, what a perfect ending. And they get a top 10 pick because the Rams sucked. This is not good for us.
It was my dream that the Bears would be the one to do to Green Bay what the Lions got to do. So congratulations to Detroit. Speaking of the Lions, Adam, I want to get your reaction to Dan Campbell and his comments on Jalen Carter, if we can play this, Joey, because I thought it was interesting, and certainly in comparison to Matt Eberflus, who, God bless the Flus, but he won't tell you where he's going to dinner. And then here comes Dan Campbell. And here were his thoughts on Jalen Carter, who the Lions, are considering at 6, 18, and who knows if they draft this guy. Let's listen to the coach.
A, can you define that? And then B, there's a lot of questions about you, not necessarily specifically about him, but when you're dealing with some of those draft guys that have some of the pertinent questions, like what's the non-negotiable for you? What do you need to hear from them to be comfortable? Is it the honesty? Is it the football first part?
Yeah, no, I think honesty helps. I think you want to know. I think ultimately you want to know. It's one thing, like, for example, does a player give all that he has on the tape? Is there a player? He's not a lazy player. All right. Now, there are plenty of times you'll turn the tape on and the guy's not going to snap the whistle, but it does not deal with laziness. They haven't been coached to do it. They haven't had a coach that's been on them, or they just don't know. They're just unaware, and you get away with some things that ordinarily you wouldn't. And that's really, they just don't know. And so I think that's what you're trying to figure out. And you go through the character when you start talking about and the position coach. You start talking to the head coach. You start talking to the resources at the school, and then you begin to develop. Hey, man, this is what this guy's really like. Like you talk about Carter. I mean, we talked to a teammate of his the other day, and man, he told us some things we didn't know that nobody probably would have known. It was like, oh, it's interesting. It's pretty good. So it's interesting.
Okay, so there's a lot there, and at the end is especially the interesting part. Interesting, and then he says pretty good. So it sounds to me like, and it's interesting. Another interesting part is, was he not coached to do that? You tell me that Kirby Smart at Georgia's not telling him to play hard all the time? I mean, that's you're kind of creating excuses for the dude. But I don't know. I just appreciate the transparency on one side, and I want that guy to be the coach of the Bears on another side. And I'm wondering, does that sound to you like Jalen Carter is going to end up in Detroit if it was up to Dan Campbell?
I think it's very honestly what the most telling part of that is now obviously he got some intelligence from one of his teammates at Georgia. If the Lions pass on him, that raises a red flag to me, because the Lions are in the perfect position to take Jalen Carter. Them and Seattle. Both teams are holding lottery tickets with first-round picks that they weren't expecting, that now have landed in the top 10 for the Seahawks, a top 5 pick. Those are two coaches and two organizations that would foster a player like Jalen Carter. Think about Pete Carroll and his history going all the way back to USC. Think about the way that Dan Campbell holds his business, the way he has built a culture in Detroit. I honestly believe that this is the funniest thing about the Bears is, like, if these two teams are passing on him, then why would you take them? Like, these are the two ideal situations, perfectly objectively. The two organizations that I would look at, Pete Carroll, Dan Campbell, they've handled players that have had some questions coming into the league. And if both of those coaches who have needs at that position with a generational talent, if both of them had decided that with their lottery pick, their free money, these are gift cards. These draft picks for them are gift cards that they weren't expecting. If they're not taking Jalen Carter, I'm not sure that I want to get into that business either. Like, that is, I kind of like it. And I trust Ryan Poles to do his thing. And if the Bears ended up picking him, I'd be like, okay, like I'll trust you. You know more than me. But at the same time, it would be a concern for me that both of those teams passed up on him.
For sure. Adam, real quick, just sticking with the NFC North, Detroit Lions, how are you kind of viewing this division right now? Obviously, if Aaron Rodgers out of the equation, I don't know where Minnesota is going to be completely at this point right now, but it seems like Detroit's the front runner, and we'll see what Justin Fields can do in year 3. But how are you kind of viewing the division and going into this 2023 season?
It is a really interesting thing because the Packers, I don't think, are going to be very good. The Minnesota Vikings, they're going to regress. They have to. You're not going to win 12 one-score games again. You're going to regress back to the mean. I think that means at least 6 fewer wins for you. And it comes down, and just a 50. That's 50-50. Like, you're not winning all those games again. You're not going to live that way. It's impossible. It's mathematically impossible. So I look at the Lions and I look at the Bears, and it's very interesting of, like, which side would you want to be on? Now, currently, the Lions are further than the Bears, but what the Bears have is their franchise quarterback. Would you rather be in the situation where you're the Chicago Bears and you have draft capital over the next 3 years, but you have your quarterback of the future? Or would you rather be the better team right now, but you have Jared Goff? And this is no disrespect to Jared Goff, who played very well at the end of last season. Personally, objectively, I'd rather be in the Bears spot. I think that when you have your quarterback, it is a much different way of living. We have not experienced this in our lifetime. We don't know what it's like to go in, like, just to be in an offseason where you're like, yeah, at least we don't need to worry about the quarterback. I know we had that a little bit with Jay Cutler, but this is a different feeling, and this is sort of brand new for us, and it's refreshing. So I'd rather be in the Bears spot, even if the Lions are better than us at this point in time.
Yeah, and as far as this year is concerned, when you're looking at it, like, the Bears are kind of playing with house money because they don't have the expectations the Bears or the Lions are going to have this season. So there's a pressure factor because every time the Bears are hyped up like they were in 2019, they fall on their face seemingly most of my lifetime. So pressure is certainly an aspect of it where the Bears aren't going to have as much pressure to be like a 10-win team, they could surprise maybe that way. Who knows? But the one question I wanted to ask you, you're the fantasy football expert on NFL Network. You're not just an expert, you're one of the most entertaining guys on that entire network. You do a fantastic job. And I need you to help me out because I finished last place in my fantasy football league last year, and I had been 2 out of the last 3 years prior to that, the champ. And now I'm like, it's hard for me to focus because we're doing this all day. We're watching the Bears in studio. I can't pay attention to the league. It is excuses. So I need your help, Adam. And when I'm looking at the Bears and Justin Fields, who was QB1 ranked for like 6 weeks in a row, right? You would have ever, as a Bears fan, to see my quarterback at the top of the fantasy football rankings for quarterbacks week to week was mind-blowing. And now you've got DJ Moore. You've got a wide receiver room that is respectable at the very least, if not solid. And then Khalil Herbert enters the fold as potential RB1 with
hold on. Dante Foreman. Dante Foreman. He had 5 100-yard games last year. How many did the Bears have as a team? How many did they have without their quarterback having 3 of them? I love Foreman. I thought I was bummed out that David Montgomery was leaving, but when you're like, oh, we're getting Dante Foreman, you're like, that's a pretty good player. I'm not going to be upset about that. So I look at it fantasy-wise. I think the biggest thing, and I always kind of now buck conventional wisdom of getting an elite quarterback, because every hipster is like, hey, wait on a quarterback. I got Geno Smith in the 10th round. You're like, yeah, but for every one of those, you end up with some other quarterback who doesn't play as well. And for week to week, Geno wasn't as good as you think he is. So every team that I had last year that made the fantasy championships, my quarterbacks were either Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, or Josh Allen. I think that gives you a floor that's very safe, and every week you're going to be competitive and don't mess around with it. And of course, Justin Fields should hopefully be in that mix, although his running could go down and he's going to rely more on passing. And if you're in a league that rewards you with 4 points for a passing touchdown, Justin Fields could regress fantasy wise, which is fine with us if we're out there winning and he's not running the ball as much as he did last season.
So you're going to see him being taken as a hot target in the early rounds, but you're suggesting potentially, playing wind to the caution or caution to the wind when it comes to that. Yeah, that's interesting.
I'm gonna take a guy like,
what about a guy like DJ Moore? Where would you rank? Like if you're scouting where you're going to take him in fantasy leagues, what round are you looking as best value?
I anticipate him getting a ridiculous amount of targets. And one of the big reasons why is that, playing that X slot or the X spot, not the slot, but the X spot. When you look at all of Justin Fields' highlights last year, there's a lot of broken coverages or not broken protection, and he worms out of it and then runs down the field. We might see less of that and more of him being like, oh, there's DJ Moore wide open. And I know Justin's not left-handed, but bear with me. I feel like we're going to do a lot of that, and there's going to be a big trust of I know DJ's going to be open. I don't think that he had that trust with a lot of the receivers last year. He was like, Dante Pettis seems open, but nah. There was a couple times he tried it and it worked out. But for the most part, he trusted himself more than he trusted his receivers. But I think that DJ Moore comes in with a respect in the league, and he's going to be able to throw him a lot more opportunities, a lot more 50-50 balls. And so I see it switching that way, which means less rushing, which will be a problem for us fantasy-wise. But for Bears fans, we'll be delighted. And who cares how we're moving the football? We actually started to see it at the end of last year. If you look at the Eagles game and you look at some of the highlights, when you look at the way, because David Montgomery was his safety valve in that game, that's where I see DJ Moore making a huge impact.
I want to do a rewind back here just for a second. I meant to do this at the start. No worries, don't get nervous, Adam. But I like a little bit of anatomy of an Adam rank. My Bears history, I had Dad Wen played football in high school and college. Marshall High School, Western Illinois, was a leatherneck before World War II. Go Fred Carman. There's a headline out there in some Chicago newspaper. Carman runs 101 yards to beat Harrison. You don't have that in the Braggs family. We'll talk about that later, Braggs. So I got that going on. And then I got 2 older brothers who, like, my entire upbringing, I'm going to be 50 in August. They're 20 years and 15 years older than me. All I heard every day was the greatness of Gale Sayers. Gale Sayers, Gale Sayers, Gale Sayers, Gale Sayers. He was like the Jordan in the household. And then my first Bears game was at Soldier Field was Bears Bucks Game 1 Super Bowl year 1985. You got like the fandom all over you. Like, how did it come to be?
Yeah, you know what? My dad was a World War II veteran. So he was born in Sterling, Illinois in the 1920s. It'd be weird to be the 2020s. So he grew up a Chicago Bears fan. And as a matter of fact, he used to tell me stories about going to Comiskey Park because you couldn't get into Wrigley Field to go see Bears games. So they had to go to Comiskey Park. And he's like, I was an obnoxious Bears fan in the Chicago Cardinals home stadium, rooting for them. So he was he's a big Bears fan. Walter Payton was actually his guy. He saw everybody. I mean, when you're born in the 20s, you see everybody. But Walter Payton was undisputedly his guy. And so I was born in Chicago, and we lived there for 5 years. And then we moved to Southern California. And so I grew up, which is always annoying to people because I root for the Lakers. Rooting for the Kings was not a happy occasion with my family a number of years ago. The Angels, my dad grew up as a Cubs fan, or both my parents grew up as Cubs fans and all that stuff. My dad switched every team except for the Bears. Was the one that he would not change. He was not about to root for the Rams. So I was sort of like, I kind of like the Rams, and the Cowboys were always out on TV out here too. But my dad was, my first helmet was a Bears helmet. Bears, like I have Bears stuff for days, but I was always like, but what about the Rams? I get it now as a father, because my son, not my daughter, my 7-year-old daughter is an ace. She'll root for whoever I root for. She's like, we're Angels, no doubt about it. Arsenal, fine. My son starts talking about the Dodgers, and I'm like, how do you know what Dodger Stadium looks like? Stop this. And so I was just kind of like, whatever. And so then when obviously there's no football here for 20 some odd years. So I eventually, like, at the behest, like, finally embraced the family team. So as a little kid, I was sort of ambivalent. Like, I'm into like Super Tecmo Bowl and stuff like that. But then, eventually, and unfortunately, both my parents have passed away. So for my father, I have his starter jacket. Christmas of 1985, my mom gave him a starter jacket. The original old school one. I still have it. The closet's behind me. It's still hanging there. It's still brought out on special occasions. So for me, at some point, and, working with the NFL, it's like, it's not always easy to be a fan of one team. But like, I really embraced the Bears. I've fulfilled the family wishes, like the prodigal son of Park Ridge. Although I was Schaumburg, but whatever. Park Ridge sounds better.
Close enough.
But it was really something that I wanted to live into the family tradition. Like, it is something that gives my kids a sense of like, this family started in Ireland, but this family started in Chicago. And so this is our connection back to Chicago. And this is going to be something you're rooting for, the teams that your grandfather and your grandmother rooted for. Your grandfather would save up all this money. He lived in a farm in Sterling and would get to go to one game a year. And it was at Comiskey Park to go see the Bears and Cardinals. And so I wanted to keep that tradition alive and going. So that's why the Bears mean so much to me, and why I really love being a part of the Chicago Bears space. So that's my abridged story, and this is why it's annoying to a lot of you. Like, why do you root for Ohtani? Like, okay.
No, and you do a great job bringing the positivity to Bears Twitter, because I know it's sorely needed on the mean streets of Bears Twitter at times. So I appreciate your positivity and energy. And I always got to commend you, because I think most people that go to a national platform like NFL Network or ESPN, they tend to just root for everybody, right? And if your loyalties lie one way or the other, you kind of push that to the side for the betterment of the league and the brand or whatever. And you didn't. You've gone full blown. I'm Bears meatball. You'll pick them to win 12 games on shows. You go crazy. And I think as most Bears, I can speak for most Bears fans, we appreciate that you show that passion on a platform that big.
Well, the best part of it too is because I had to be like kind of a closeted Bears fan, and then years ago we had the Dave Damashek football program on the NFL Network, and I'm like, hey, let's do this thing where it's called fan free agency, where I get to pick a team, because I would be like, well, we don't have a team in Southern California, who should I root for? And so then it was all the guys for me to be like, oh, I'm a Bears fan, and like, oh, okay, and it gives us a backstory. And everything. And so like, oh, well, I did, but because, again, it was just the right thing to do with my family. And now everybody can get off they're not completely off my back. Like I get this stuff sent to me. Like, I will get gifts and be like, oh, I'm like, this is not a Bears hat. There's a bull right there. That's not a bear. That is legitimately not a bear, but it looks cool. The colors are cool. So I sort of low-key hate it. I don't want to put a Lakers hat back there because it would be too confusing. Because then I have to do this story all the time. How did you? I'm like, all right, let's sit down. It's story time with Rank. But
it's a great story to tell, Adam. And one last thing for you. You planning on coming back to Chicago anytime soon? I know we're supposed to have you in the studio for one of the times, so we'll have to get that set up.
Well, GMFB ruined that. I ended up doing GMFB that week. I actually said that on the show last night, the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. I would mention, like, I wanted to go in studio, but that got blown up. But hopefully, I'll be back. I should be back at some point during the summer. I mean, just if for nothing else, I would love, and I'll kick it off here. I think it'd be really cool for everybody who creates Bears content, if we could like get together for a day. And I know personally, I love Roscoe Village. I love the Beat Kitchen. I think if we just set up a Saturday and we set up our own Bears Fan Fest, we just overtook like the Beat Kitchen or something, and we just did a marathon stream that could be on everybody's, either like CHGO, Sick, we got the Tape Never Lies, like everybody, just be a part of it and just have a cool like little blowout and just have a lot of fun. And but I would love to do that at some point.
Yeah,
great idea.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And the Beat Kitchen's a great spot. My buddy who used to play in Bizarro used to dominate there on the stage. Damn it, some good live music at the Beat Kitchen back in the day. All right, Ed, before you go here, and by the way, we had a Zoom hangout last night, and everybody was talking about the Sick Podcast in there, and you and Carmen, and so you're talking
about Carmen, and then like, oh, and the idiot that she's with.
No. I mean, she did get a bunch of love as she deserves, but you were right there. So you said JSN. Let's get a prediction on what you think the Bears will actually do. Braggs is on his Bragg's pulpit saying they're going to trade back. He's made that call, and he was right about going down to 9. He's been puffing out the chest, deservedly so on that one. So what do you think they do at 9?
Oh, my gosh. I love the idea of moving back. I think that's a big possibility. And when you look at how Ryan Poles is building this team, where it's a multi-year situation, he even mentioned that this week at the NFL owners meetings, that moving down for one of these teams like the Buccaneers to move up and getting an additional first-round pick to give us 3 first-round picks next year, I think that's a realistic possibility. But as much as we talk about JSN, which would be my choice, Paris Johnson Jr., pass rusher, we're going to end up with Christian Gonzalez. That's my prediction. We're going to end up, and everybody's going to go crazy, but it's going to be a shrewd move, and we're going to have this great secondary. And so my prediction will be Christian Gonzalez.
If they do that, I'll support the hell out of it, because that means he's taking best player available, and that's the philosophy that ultimately gets teams to the top. And the other way, you end up taking Sam Bowie and not drafting the greatest player of all time, which of course Adam knows, even though he lives in LA, that Jordan is up here, and then there's like a space between 2 and 3, and then we can talk about who's number 4. But we don't need to do that right now. I just, Bulls Lakers, so it's on my mind for some reason, and so I think that somebody's coming to town, even though he was. Never mind. Adam, dude, thank you so much, man. Braggs, thanks for setting this up. You guys, we really appreciate it.
It's a lot of fun.
You're the greatest, Ring. Honestly,
the
energy you bring and the support you show to all the different outlets, big or small, on Bears Twitter. It doesn't go unnoticed, and we all
For sure.
appreciate it a lot. So I ain't blowing smoke. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're too kind. Thank you so much. I love the job that you guys have been doing. It's a lot of fun to be a part of this Bears fandom, and let's keep up the momentum. And here's the thing, too. We've walked through all the bad times, and I know we're going to have a lot of hangers on. Don't be upset at those people. That's okay. It's just more meaningful for us, and it's going to be a lot of fun over the next couple of years, so enjoy it. And I'll see you guys real soon. I know we'll do this in person at some point. So thanks again for having me.
All right, Adam.
Our pleasure, 1,000%. There he goes, Adam Rank. Good job, Braggs. Good to have that gentleman on the program. He's freaking awesome.